Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Canadian Football Central, CFL content for the fans, by the fans, and we have our preview now of Week 2 of CFL action. Had quite a crazy Week 1. I had not so great predictions Week 1. Hopefully that improves. If you haven't already, make sure you guys like the video, subscribe, and maybe turn on that notification bell. You don't want to miss anything. And also check out, we have our interview that should be live at this point with Micah Awe. Make sure you check that out. An hour content of just excellent stuff. You get to hear about the time he played with Patrick Mahomes of the NFL and all sorts of goodies. So make sure you guys check that out. Now, Rick, how we feel about this week? Because I will say, as a Bomber fan, I feel much better about this week's matchup as opposed to last week's, despite the fact that we have no film on our opponent.
I mean, you guys, that's interesting.
Yep.
But even more interesting, Winston Rose, a former Bomber,
that's right,
has now been added to the practice roster for the Red Blacks.
So do we think that this is similar to a Jonathan Moxey situation in terms of learn the playbook, then join the main roster sort of a ordeal?
Pretty much.
Just because I was about to say, it's not like Moxey doesn't make that defensive
and
core for
Ottawa also Ottawa brought back Sherrod Baltimore, who was on the team last year.
Oh yeah.
But again, you gotta, give him time to practice, get time with the playbook,
get him up to speed, and then eventually get him on the roster. Yeah, I know this will be interesting. You're gonna have the both of last season's Bombers quarterbacks against each other. I guess we'll get right into it. Get into the first game of the week. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers take on the Ottawa Red Blacks, and we have the quarterback matchup of Zach Collaros versus Drew Brown, Winnipeg Blue Bombers backup quarterback last year. This year, that's Chris Streveler coming down from the NFL. But Drew Brown taking the reins in his first game as a true starting quarterback of a team, as hopefully for Ottawa, the hopeful face of what's to come from that franchise. And so, as a Bomber fan, with how poorly and abysmal last game went against Montreal, what are some talking points going into this game? Well, one of them is that Brady Oliveira has not been practicing, so it is still...
He's questionable.
He's questionable. As of the making of this video, that's just to be clear. As by the time this video is out, it might be confirmed whether he is playing or not.
No. By time this video comes out, the depth chart will be out.
Yes. So so just for context, we are recording this at 10:53 Central Time on June 11th, the night before this goes up. So we do not have the depth charts yet. But now one thing that is to keep in mind is that Brady Oliveira has missed many practices before and still played. He did this much last year. However, there is some concern, and Coach O'Shea, during the press conference after the practice today, had basically said that there will be an update coming tomorrow. Just didn't really give much in that regard, which is not out of the ordinary. So what are some keys to success here for the Bombers? We're going to go from the offense to the defense, and then we'll take a look at what the Ottawa Red Blacks have to offer and see what they're able to counter and what they may not be able to counter. On the offensive side of things, Winnipeg Blue Bombers O-line looking for a little bit of a better game than last game. They weren't the biggest problem. However, there were some times where Zach really was a little limited on his time in the pocket. So just ideally want to give him a little bit more room to work with. Then again, Zach Collaros possibly played his worst game as a Blue Bomber last game. Just a lot of missed throws. The throwing game for Zach Collaros definitely did get better as the game went on. And I think this is really just evident about how he spent no reps in the preseason. So hopefully last week's terrible loss essentially was that preseason for Zach Collaros and he gets back to form. However, I understand the concern about Zach Collaros, not necessarily long-term, but short-term currently, in the sense of that it's not like Zach Collaros hasn't not played preseason before and put up a much better performance in game one. So that is something to consider. He was throwing a lot of balls low, but then there were also instances where receivers just weren't running their routes properly. Although I will say there has to be I think a better coaching mindset. I think that starts behind the bench. When you notice that your opponent is playing zone defense, flood the zone. That's how you beat zone defense. So it's one of those things where I think Buck Pierce really needs to make sure he's on his game against the Ottawa Red Blacks. On the defensive side for Winnipeg, I'd say that overall they weren't too bad last game. They gave up 27 total, not ideal, but it certainly could have been worse. It's one of those things where you're going to give up some points against a strong team like the Alouettes, but it's one of those things where when you're going against a team like Montreal, you gotta put more pressure in the pocket. Cody Fajardo never really was under any real threat all game in that pocket. You need to make Drew Brown panic. You do. When you got guys like Willie Jefferson, you got guys like Jake Thomas on that line, you got to be able to do something with it. I want to see Celestin Haba do something with it instead of just taking a roughing the passer penalty, because that's all he did last game that I noticed. So just ideally doing a bit better on the D-line sort of stuff. Making sure you got your corners covered. That was something that got burned. Tyson Philpott with an incredible game against Winnipeg last week, and that really just burned us. But is there anything else you want to say about the Bombers, or shall we move on to the Red Blacks? Because I don't want to forget about the Red Blacks. I know Red Black fans are waiting for me to talk about their team.
There is good news coming out of Winnipeg.
Yep.
Adam Bighill is available with his calf injury.
Right. I was pretty sure that Adam Bighill was going to be coming back, so definitely a big boost there at the middle linebacker position. Push some of those guys to the outside.
Also, don't forget Kenny Lawler did go on the sixth game.
And this is with the fractured arm, I'm pretty sure.
Yes. So then that means that you guys have Schoen, Dembski, and Wolodarski, the only three receivers that have any CFL experience that I know of.
Yeah, realistically, besides some of those guys that just played a little bit last game, if we're talking some real CFL veteran experience, just those three. So Zach will have to roll with them and see if he can make something out of a rookie. On the Ottawa Red Black side of things, what's a major advantage you have? You have film on your opponent, and they don't have film on you. If you're the Ottawa Red Blacks, you want to take advantage of this like crazy. And so one of the keys, I think, will be to the success of the Red Blacks is if they can defend that pocket the way that Montreal was able to. I'm not necessarily convinced that they can, even though there are guys like Drew Desjardins that I'm very, very confident in on that Red Blacks offensive line. I'm not sure how well they will do against what should be a pretty pissed off Winnipeg team. But if you give Drew Brown some space to cook, he was shown last year that he was able to get the job done. So, and it's not like they don't have capable receivers there in Ottawa. They got guys like Jalen Acklin, who obviously has his best days in Hamilton, wasn't really able to repeat that success after leaving. But if he can get that reinvigorated, that could really be an asset for the Alouettes, or not for the Alouettes, for the Red Blacks. Sorry. There's guys like Braylon Addison, who he actually came on the show. You know, thank you to Braylon Addison still for coming on the show. I think that was like 2 years ago. But he has been a good receiver for the Red Blacks. They just haven't really been able to feed him properly. Then you got guys like Dominic Rhymes coming over from BC, one of their top receivers last year. So I think if you're the Red Blacks, you gotta keep the offense moving and trying to at least getting a field goal out of each try. You're most likely not just going to run circles around the Bombers. You got to be able to just slowly pick away and keep getting little points there, taking those little victories when you can and hoping they add up.
So a couple of things that I will mention. So their running back.
Yep.
Not Devontae Williams, because we all know he's done for the season.
Yes.
Raquel Armstead. He's questionable, so they don't even have a running back. Well, they do have a running back, but he would be their backup. So now they're going to like their third string in case he can't play. The one player on Ottawa that I will mention is, I got to pull up the roster here to make sure. Devontae Dedmon. If you guys let him run through you on special teams, that's going to be your guys' butts are cooked.
Yeah, that's definitely a big concern. I mean, we're talking about a former CFL Rookie of the Year. Devontae Dedmon went up, spent some time with the Miami Dolphins. Devontae Dedmon, just an incredible returner. And he definitely is going to be one of the biggest threats on this Red Blacks team. So Bombers going to need to make sure they do well in the special teams. Brendan Sheehan had a good game at punter last game. Guy like Sergio Castillo needs to have a better game than last week. I understand there was that whole ordeal with the chipped balls. We did a video on it. Please check it out. All good stuff over there. But now that this is up to club's choice, there's no way that Sergio Castillo is going to be using those balls after saying what he did. And so now we need to figure out if it really was the ball or if it was Castillo. And I certainly hope it wasn't Castillo. I'll take his word for it. He's a kicker. He'll know much more about that than me. But it's one of those things where if you're Castillo, you need a good game coming into this week. And I think everyone on the Bombers needs to after what was just not a good performance last week. But overall, I don't think there's much more to cover unless, is there anything else you got?
Just one other person that I'm going to mention that's going to be debuting for the defense this week.
Yep.
A Darius Pickett that came over from Toronto. So that's
right.
going to improve their defense even more.
Yep.
So Carter, the floor is all yours. Who are you
all
taking?
in all,
I already know.
As much as I hope the Red Blacks are able to get some successes this season, I just don't see the Bombers winning. Don't see them losing. 2 games in a row, especially after the way last week went against a much weaker opponent this week. I see the Bombers being able to get it done. So I'm going with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Ooh. See,
oh boy.
I was going to go with Ottawa, but they don't have no running game. If you don't have no running game, you're not going to win.
That's true.
So had they have had a running back, like a good running back, I would have picked Ottawa, but I'm going to go with Winnipeg.
No, that's fair. And overall, as much as I love Drew Brown, typically it takes quarterbacks a few games to really settle in when they have that number 1 spot. I'm not even just talking about being a backup quarterback and starting a game. I'm talking about being a bona fide starting quarterback. Usually takes a little bit of time, and that's fine. So, but I hope some success for Drew Brown after Thursday's game. So, all in all, my prediction is that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers will defeat the Ottawa Red Blacks. So going into our next game of the week will be on the Friday. This will be an 8 p.m. start time Central. That would be 9 o'clock Eastern. And this will be the Montreal Alouettes against the Edmonton Elks. This will be Edmonton's second home game of the year. And, well, hopefully it goes a little bit better in the first. You know, they gotta make sure they're able to hold on to a lead. But that's if they can get one, because they're up against a absolutely merciless team in the Montreal Alouettes, who in their very first game of the year, I think they showed that, you know, that right now they are the best team in the CFL. Seriously, as much as it hurts me to say that as a Bomber fan, I can't seriously say that my Bombers are better than the Alouettes after last week. Not right now.
So I have a question to ask you regarding this game. Now this is a big if Edmonton comes and beats Montreal, what does that say about your Bombers?
Depends how we play against Edmonton.
Oh yeah, I guess so. But
depends. Then that creates the paradox. Then if we beat the Edmonton Elks, the question is, are the Elks now in the picture? I'm kidding, but it's one of those things where if you're the Edmonton Elks, you gotta. What's going to be the key to this game? First of all, keeping the offense going, playing well enough defensively, although I'm not going to lie. If I am Edmonton's defense, if I'm Chris Jones, I'm terrified of putting up this defense against guys like Julian Grant, against guys like Tyson Philpott, you know, against this Montreal Alouettes offense that was just running circles around one of the better defenses in the league in Winnipeg, and just being able to run circles around that, and now going against arguably one of the weakest defenses in the league. I'd be terrified if I was the Edmonton Elks in that aspect. One place though that they do have a bit of a strong hand, even though the Alouettes have a very, very capable defense, the Elks offense is nothing to shake your head at. McLeod Bethel Thompson was able to do a decent amount last week, and there's a lot of receivers that he can really, really use and do a lot of good things with on this team. So if you're the Edmonton Elks, you really you need a bounce back game, and more than anything, my God, don't give up 21 damn points in the fourth quarter. You're never going to win a damn game if you give up 3 touchdowns in last quarter of the game. There's no clutch in that. Even if they almost did get it back, they didn't, though. You can't give up that many and still expect to win.
I honestly think it's going to come down to special teams.
See,
Because
to me, it's the
because
Elks
you
defense.
no, so what I mean is Boris Beatty and Cote are the same thing. What I'm saying is that it's going to come down to the defense is don't forget Javon Leake. If Javon Leake can get through that special teams wall, he's going to get special teams touchdowns.
Yep. That's true.
Like he basically almost had one last week, but it was called back because of a penalty. So I mean, don't sleep just because they don't have the defense. Don't sleep on Edmonton. That it could just be
they were able to do a lot of damage. It's just one of those things where when you blow 3 touchdowns in the last quarter of the game,
well, that's
it's hard
the thing.
to have
You got to play.
You got to play a consistent game from start to finish. I say that as someone who has been a massive critic of my lovely Winnipeg Blue Bombers and their inability to play a whole game. I mean, they did play a whole game last week. They just played a whole game badly. So if you're the Edmonton Elks, if you can play more of the first 3 quarters of that game and less of the fourth, you have a chance against Montreal. Again, with how well Montreal was last week and how dominating they were against what was the other team to beat, along with BC as well. But I mean, even then they lost in the first week. Montreal looks really, really dangerous. And the Edmonton Elks, though, they have the opportunity, even if they don't win this game. I think the Edmonton Elks have an opportunity to have a really close game and really put the West on notice. Even if they lose this game, them putting up a much stronger performance than Winnipeg did, I think could really, really do something for them. And hopefully they could, hopefully for their own sake, they could use that to get an edge on teams like Calgary, on teams like Saskatchewan, that are kind of vying for what will probably be that third place spot. I say probably because most likely Winnipeg and BC get their crap together and get that done. But you never know. Maybe it doesn't happen. But overall, as much as I'd love to see the Elks do well, and I think they'll have a good game, I don't see them being able to finish the job against Montreal.
So you're taking Montreal.
I'm taking Montreal. I think Edmonton will have a good game. I think it'll be much closer than the Bombers Alouettes, but I think the Alouettes take it. I think the Alouettes extend to 2-0.
Well, considering what I have for my fantasy this week, I've loaded up on Winnipeg players. I've loaded up on Montreal. I'm going with, safely to say, Montreal.
That's fair. That's fair. So that'll be our second game of the week. Then we have
the next game is going to make it even interesting because we have Calgary and BC.
Yep, that's the Saturday game at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. Out in BC, this will be the BC Lions home opener. 50 Cent will be in the building. Will be performing.
What?
So, congratulations if it's your birthday, for 50 Cent, because you will be told about that. This is a massive draw for the BC Lions, getting 50,000 in the building for this game. Now, again, I know that some of them won't be there come kickoff and are only going there for the 50 Cent portion. I fully understand that. But 50,000 is nothing to shake your head at, and it was wow. Oh, here we go. Technical difficulties. I didn't stop recording. We're still on, Rick. Don't worry.
Oh, okay.
I was saying that, getting 50,000
50 Cent.
50 Cent, pretty impressive. Now, talking about the game here, this will be an interesting matchup in the sense of that the Calgary Stampeders were able to come with a pretty good victory up against the Hamilton Tiger-Cats last week. And the BC Lions came up short against Montreal. Cameron Dukes played a really, really consistent game. And the BC Lions weren't able to get it done. Now, with BC, you got guys like Vernon Adams Jr., who, it's funny. He's always been in that contention for number one quarterback in the CFL. And there's definitely going to be some people who I know are probably already saying that just because of what they saw of Zach Collaros last week. But, Vernon Adams has a very, very big opportunity to show who he is. And, I mean, if you watch our interview with Micah Awe, again, highly recommend. Definitely check it out. Hour and a half of just great content all around. One of the guys that he praised was a guy like Vernon Adams Jr. and just how slippery he is and how difficult he is to tackle, in the sense of that he'll be in there in like a 2-foot gap that he'll be running down, and he'll still find a way to get past some linebackers. So definitely something to keep in mind. Keep in mind if you're the not the Hamilton Tigers, the Calgary Stampeders defense. Really keeping an eye out for Vernon Adams Jr. and all the kinds of threats he poses, whether it's running or passing.
So my couple of 2 cents is William Stanback only got 85 yards, 35 rushing, 50 catching.
Yep.
Outside of McInnes and Hollins, really, you need your receiving core to step up, because
Absolutely.
if you just throw it to those two, you're not going to get anywhere. Also,
you got to start throwing to Katoy as well. Katoy's another one of your guys that had played pretty well last year, so you got to be able to use him more. And with BC, even if you're not always connecting on the touchdowns, having a kicker like Sean White on your squad, you got to use him. You got to get down to the field and give him opportunities to at least get field goals on those drives where maybe you can't make it all the way into the red zone or all the way into the end zone. So even making sure that you're getting Sean White some kicks and just consistently, just racking up that score slowly but surely is going to be definitely a bit of a key success.
The other thing that I was going to mention is, if BC Lions offensive line does plays like they did last week, they're going to be in trouble.
Yep.
Vernon Adams was sacked 6 times.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I will say is that, and I'm just kind of quickly going back to what I was talking about with Sean White. One of the other reasons you're going to need Sean White kicking quite a bit and making sure you're giving him at least those opportunities is you have to realize a team like Calgary, they're going to be doing that all game long. This is one thing that they do an excellent job with, is getting at least into the field position to allow Rene Paredes to really, really hone in and put up those points. Last week, he went 6 for 6 with his longest at an astonishing 52 yards down the field. So you gotta get that done. Dietrich Mills, decent game, was able to get 87 yards last week. One thing that I think they did a much better job, they at least Calgary and Coach Dickinson did a much better job of that they have previously in previous years, is making sure that Jake Maier isn't throwing the ball 40 times a game. That was something that we had gotten used to as of last year. And again, it was one of those things, he was leading the league for a large portion of that season in receiving yards, but as well as interceptions, and he got burned on it. Last week, did a very good job, honed in, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions for Jake Maier. On only 21 completions on 26 attempts, very good for Jake Maier. So if you're the Calgary Stampeders, continue more of that, making sure that you're utilizing that run game, being able to get it done. Cam Eccles got his first career touchdown with in the CFL. So if you're the Calgary Stampeders, definitely looking to build on more of that. With a guy like Reggie Bagleton, only 45 yards on him, definitely want to have him crack at least that 50 mark. So definitely want to use him a little bit more. And even Jalen Philpott was talking about how he hopes to be as good as his brother. So if you're the Calgary Stampeders, I think maybe you should check in on that and see how that goes. Not saying that he's not capable of it, Sure, he probably is, but we will. It's one of those things where you will have to wait and see, because talk is talk and action is action. So, but I'm not going to doubt him, because, I won't. A little bit of brotherly competition. Nothing ever went wrong with that.
So I have a funny feeling it's all going to come down to the last game, because I assume that you're taking BC as well.
In this game right here?
Yeah. Calgary and BC.
I'm having a hard time with this.
Ooh.
I'm really considering Calgary. I don't know. So I'm assuming you're taking BC.
I'm taking BC. Even though Vernon Adams had an MRI on his hand, they said his hand was fine, that he was going to be playing this week. It must have just been a stinger when he got the helmet to the
But
hand
does that
last
mean
week.
he's 100% still? But even then, it's one of those things that I worry about that BC Lions O-line. That because even if Vernon Adams is good, but Vernon Adams is also such a good running quarterback when he's getting rushed and being able to make something out of that.
But then you also
I
have
am
Mills who put up 87 rushing yards last week too.
on 13 attempts though. To be fair,
Yeah.
um, you know what? I'm gonna cautiously go with the BC Lions. I'm going with the BC Lions,
Cautiously.
but like not a confident answer. But you know, home crowd, 50 Cent in the building. This is when you got to get it done. If you're BC going 0-2 to start the season, when you're one of the top 3 teams in the league going in, not a good look. So I'm going to go with the BC Lions. I'm going to say they figure it out for this game, even if it is very, very close. But I could totally see Calgary winning this game as well. That's why I'm so conflicted. But we'll go with BC. And then we have our last game of the week, which is the Hamilton Ticats home opener. Saskatchewan at Hamilton. Rick, you've been waiting all video to talk about your team. Go for it.
I mean, hopefully Bo Levi Mitchell gets back to his as well as he did last week. 27 for 38, 300 yards. Yeah, he did throw a pick, but hopefully our receivers can catch this week. I mean, Shamar Bridges, who would have thought 6'4" receiver that wasn't even in the pro leagues last year, would have 85 yards for 7 catches last week.
I think you want to get some more utilization of my boy Brendan O'Leary Orange. That's right.
Tim White finally came around.
Yep.
Like if we play,
get some more for Stephen. Get some more for Stephen Dunbar. I'd say.
If we can play like we did the second half, the whole game, I believe we have a chance to win. Don't forget.
Absolutely. And now
James Butler also had.
I was about to say that's going to be a big threat.
Yards on 13.
That's going to be a big threat against the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Is James Butler with over 100 rushing yards? I think he was he the only running back in week 1 to hit that mark?
Bo got 36 rushing yards himself.
No. I'm talking about rushing yards. Was James Butler the only one to crack 100 week 1?
Yes. Because
I was about to say I didn't think anyone else did.
Mills was second with 87.
Yeah, I knew Mills was close, but I knew he didn't hit it. So
now we're coming to the defense, of which I know Peters is going to be playing this week because they haven't started to practice because they're practicing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, walkthrough Saturday, game Sunday. I want to say Moxie also plays this week.
I think that would be a great choice because one thing that Moxie has done well just now, maybe the stats back it up, maybe you don't. This is just my observation from some of the Calgary stuff that I watched last year where he was playing, was that he was pretty good in the interception game and being able to get the kind of those picks. And it seemed like Demario Houston was going to be kind of the natural replacement for him in that aspect when he got picked up by the Stampeders. Moxie was always able to, from what I remember, get himself into some good positions to be able to make those plays. So when you're going against a receiving core of guys like Sean Bain Jr., who got 3 touchdowns last week, 125 receiving yards on only 5 receptions, incredible game for Sean Bain Jr. And then you guys got guys like Stearns, Schaefer Baker, MLS, and even AJ Ouellette, who sometimes will get a ball thrown to him. I think being able to step in front of those and turn that ball around and get the play going in the other direction will be really key. A guy I think like Jonathan Moxie is a guy that's definitely capable of that. So we'll have to see if he's able to get that done.
It wouldn't surprise me if Moxie, Kachatonis, Leonard, if he plays, because I know he left the game injured last week, or even Peters had a couple of interceptions off of Harris.
Yep.
But our defensive line has to put pressure on the quarterback.
Absolutely.
And enough with this 20 yards off the line bull crap, because that was ridiculous last week of how they gave Calgary Stampeders last week so many yards off the line. It's like they're back 20 yards. They throw, 6 or 7. They run up 3. There's an automatic first down.
Yep.
And the one last thing that I'm going to leave off on the Ticats, my God, Boudreaux, get your crap together. We need more than 20 yards for Lawrence Woods III on returns, and we need better coverage on special teams.
Yeah, definitely.
Otherwise, I'm going to have a shirt that says, Boudreaux, you're next to be on the unemployment line.
Now, one thing I will say, some stuff that you definitely are going to need to keep notice of if you're the Hamilton Ticats. Keep an eye on a guy like Avery. Last week, 1 interception, 1 sack for him. Great game defensively for him. Then also guys like Mario Alford, definitely going to need to have the special teams out for the Hamilton Ticats to go against Mario Alford and all of the success he's been able to get at returner for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And so,
Jameer Thurman and Malik Carney both make their returns to Hamilton because they were with us last year. Other than that, I don't. So here's the thing with Harris. Yeah, Harris threw 305 yards, 3 touchdowns, but he also threw 2 picks last week. So, I mean, correct. If we play our cards right and play a better defense, don't be surprised if he throws another 2 or 3, maybe 4 picks this game. Just with Moxie and Peters playing along, because Peters was an interception.
I can say that, although the only concern I'm going to say is that I could say the same thing about Bo Levi Mitchell.
I mean, Bo had a better game than Trevor. Well, no, Trevor Harris had more interceptions.
I know, but I've seen these signs come out of both Trevor Harris and Bo Levi Mitchell before. That's why I'm saying that. That's all. To be fair.
But so, also, Corey Mace tries to go for his second win of this young CFL season in his first year as a coach.
So, I think it's time we do our predictions.
Well, considering that I went 3-1 last week, you went 1-3. You already know where I'm going on this game.
You're going Hamilton.
I'm going Hamilton. The only thing is, last week you took Hamilton and they burned you.
Exactly. And Saskatchewan, even though they were losing, they managed to get it done. I hope the Ticats win, but I think the Riders will.
Saskatchewan. So you're going with Saskatchewan.
My pick is going to be the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Not that I want them to. Definitely do not want them to. But me, they look like a team that is pretty decently complete, and I know that they want to make a push to really establish their presence in the West.
After last week, either one of us is going to have a really horrible week, or one of us is going to have near perfect week.
Yep.
As we took the same 3 first teams and we went different ways on the last game. So one of us is going to be 4-0. One of us could be 3-1 at the most. And both of us could be 1-3 if the other 3 games don't go our way.
Well, if one of us is 1-3, one of us is 0-4. So we'll have to see. So
that's true.
It is what it is. But make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe if you have not already. Make sure you guys check out our interview with Micah Awe. Mentioned it a few times, but that's because you should really check it out. You should. And all of that good stuff. Keep in mind, this Sunday, we're going to be having an interview coming out with Mr. Jared Brinkman of the Toronto Argonauts, defensive lineman there. So make sure you guys, if you guys got any questions for him, drop that down in the comment section down below. That it shall be a good time. I'm excited for that.
I was
a lot of promotion of that out there on Twitter. So thank you to all on Twitter or X for reposting that around. Continue to do so, though. Definitely.
I was going to also say, if you see our posts on X or on Instagram, you can also leave questions out there.
Absolutely. And in the comment section down below on this video, even.
And for those lovely people over at CFL Forums for the lovely support in getting questions out. Much appreciated. And also for those beautiful ear listeners, we now have updated stuff on our Spotify channel as well.
You might even be listening to this on Spotify. So if you are, hello, and give us a 5-star review on Spotify. There's only one so far. So far, we are a 5-star podcast on Spotify. I'd like to have even more 5-star reviews on there. So if you're on Spotify, do that. That helps out the channel a ton. And overall, I think that is probably all we're going to have. Is there anything else that you got there, Rick?
No.
So, yeah, just like I said, peace, love, and positivity. And we'll see you guys next time.